Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the home build. Today I'm super excited, just like always. Every day is a new day, but today we're going to be talking about siding, and in particularly Hardi Lap siding. So that's what's happening. We're going to be talking about some of the details, in particular about Hardi Lap siding. A lot of other videos, they just talk about how you install it, but they don't really go over the details, the in cuts, the butt joints, what goes behind it, requirements that Hardi requires. So, and a bunch of other stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. You know, out of all my videos, I don't remember actually showing the back of the house. This is kind of a view of the back of the house. They already got the Hardi Lap siding on half of it. They still got the front half. The front half is going to have some different details. It's going to have the trim around the windows and that sort of thing. We just happened to elect, in this case, not doing the trim on the back side. We all got a budget and we maxed our budget. That's something that me as a carpenter, I can do later, as well as my back patio and a whole laundry list of other things. But so there's no trim around the back, around the windows on the back side, as well as the east side, and no windows other than the garage door there on the west side. So looking closer at it, for Hardi Lap siding, it's best if you have corner trim. So the product here is a 5/4 by 4 Hardi. So it's a cement board. That's what Hardi is. So some things that when you're cutting that you really need to pay attention to with Hardi is it has silica. Like any cementatious product, it has silica. So when you're cutting it, wear a respirator, be outside, have a fan kind of blowing that stuff away from it. Any of that dust that you're breathing in can cause cancer. So be very, it says it in their MSDS, they disclose that. So just paying attention to any of that sort of safety requirements, as well as eye protection, hear protection when you're cutting and that sort of thing. So around the windows, you can probably see on a previous video, I had post flash around the windows. Okay, there's no trim. So this Hardi is lapping directly onto the window itself, that flange. And since I have that peel and stick butyl flash, that post flash, when they nail it, it self heals. So that, in my opinion, that's a must. Some people just do a Tyvek tape over it. That's not enough. It's not self-healing. You're creating a hole where water can get in. So Hardi also requires to have an 1/8 of an inch gap on each end. Even if it's a smaller board, having an 1/8 inch gap on each end. That does a few things. It allows for expansion and contraction. So you know, this is going to be the south facing slope. It's going to get hot. Other parts of the country gets even hotter. So you got to have it. It's going to expand. It's going to contract. So having a caulk joint there. So that caulk joint's got to have a minimum of a minimum of 1/8 of an inch. That way you have something to caulk on the end of the Hardi, the window, and then as well as any backer rod if you need it. If it's bigger than an 1/8 of an inch, you got to have backer rod in it. It's like a foam type product. So this will get caulked as well as here. So the other thing, the cuts. So the product, the way they cut that, you can either cut it with a Hardi blade saw, like a chop saw. You can use shears. That's the best method for cutting it. But either way that you do it, when you cut anywhere on the Hardi, you create a non-primed edge. So every single edge that they're cutting, they're spraying primer on it. That way that caulking can bond better to the edge of the board. So butt joints. So you can see here's a butt joint. Here's another butt joint. Behind it, there's a piece of metal about that wide, lapping down to about here. So that joint right there actually does not need to be caulked. Okay, also if this is a cut end, they've primed it. If it's a factory edge, it's already primed. So That I might elect to caulk it. Some people caulk it for aesthetics, but it's not needed. If this Hardi was already pre-finished, has the paint baked onto it, that is not a requirement. You're not actually supposed to caulk that. So still having an 1/8 of an inch gap there, you get, in these joints here, you get bigger than an 1/8 of an inch. It just looks ugly if you're not caulking it. So tight like that, I'm okay with just the way that is. It's protected behind, so if any water does get behind here, it's just going to shed down because it laps over top of this bottom one right there. So these are all blind nailed. So what that means is there's no nailing right in here on the face. Okay, it's all on underneath. Hardi requires from the top of the board down 1 inch, or about 1 inch, to where your nail's at. That also means that depending on the board, so in this case we got a 7-inch exposure, that's what that is. It's going to be an 8 1/4, 8 1/8 full height board. So 7-inch exposure ideally is your top board up there is going to be 7 inches and matching all the rest of it. So with something like this, with different elevations going all the way around, that bottom elevation has to carry all the way around the house and calculating it up. So there are going to be times where that top board isn't quite 7 inches to match other parts of the house. So like as an example, where this corner is, that top board, the bottom of that exposure wraps around, matches that other board. Okay, it looks better to have a taller board at the top, so it's slightly bigger than 7 inches, I can tell, but rather than having a little sliver at the top, it would not quite look right. Having a 5/4 up at the top, I'm really liking that. That's a detail. Actually, I wasn't expecting to have that 5/4 run around the top up there, so I think that's a great extra detail that they're providing. Around the windows, Hardi requires that there's about 1 inch gap above the flashing. You can see there's a metal drip edge, which I'm really happy they followed the prints. And the reason for that gap, see, it seems a little big up there, but it's for dry out. You can see all the windows above the door, or excuse me, above the window there, they have the Hardi sticking up above. It's also primed, okay, and that's for paint. That is an area where that flashing is. Do not caulk that. That is an area so any water can shed out. You caulk it, you're creating a dam. It's going to go somewhere else and possibly inside your house. So got the 1/8 inch there. You're going to have an 1/8 inch at the bottom. This is an area though, however, you will caulk right here. So anything behind it sheds behind it. Around our hose bib, this is an area where you got to have that gap. It's kind of ugly looking, but caulking is going to clean all that up. So all this is going to get caulked down on the bottom, but not right here. Here's the back patio. The layout for your Hardi, it's best if it's a random layout. So what that means is it's not stepped. I'm not going to have a long piece, a 3/4 piece, a half piece, and then a 1/4 piece. Then you'll have these seams that are just all diagonal and they follow everywhere. It actually creates a lot of wasted material. So if you're starting on the bottom, full height piece, there's your cut piece, and then whatever was left off, the tail off cut from that piece starts over here, and then so forth. So the next cut piece, and you can start with 2 pieces or 3 pieces. Looks like a little bit of a stagger starting to happen there, and then those pieces there, the tail off, the cut off pieces become the start pieces of the next course. And not keeping a staggered pattern, you want to have it random looks better, and you have very little waste. Like this whole side right here, this whole east side of the house, out of all of that, that's almost all of the wasted material. So very, very little waste. If it was a stair step method like roofing shingles kind of tend to do, you're gonna have a whole pile of it, a lot of extra wasted material. So this is the east side. It looks really dirty, but that'll all get pressure washed, cleaned, and then caulked and be just fine. But make sure you're maintaining that 1/8 inch reveal, 1/8 inch gap between the corner trim and your Hardi. And another really cool detail, I'm hoping you can see it, is the trim right up right there. There's a scarf joint. So how it's cut, you can actually see one of my other videos we're talking about this. A scarf joint is an angled joint kind of downward. If it's a butt joint, which is just two square edges butting together, water can get in. But if you angle it downward or in a specific direction, then water just sheds off of it and never can get into the house. So I'm pretty darn happy. Plus they have the lap of these two trim, and that's only like a little over a foot, but it's not in the same line. That's better than nothing. Another detail that you might have seen in a previous video was where the roof meets the wall, and I did that flashing behind. Okay, that's really important because now that looks great, but all that is going to be protecting that is caulking. And what caulking does is it fails. So any water that, if it does fail and I'm not on top of it, you know, taking care of it, which could possibly happen, water's just going to get inside and it would rot out that corner right there. So having that behind protected really well makes it better for the outside and protection for weather. So all is looking really good. Here's my dryer, or my fart fan vent. Looks pretty good. You could probably see on a previous video of the flashing for the heat pump and how they go. That looks really good. This is all going to get caulked later. Again, anything behind it, it's protected. Water will shed out because it's done right. For power, I'm going to end up having to cut this out and put in a block with some flashing tucked under and that sort of thing. Didn't get that in time. I wasn't sure where they were putting these, so that's to come. Making a little repair for electrical. This is an outlet, another outlet to service the heat pump. That's a requirement. It has to be within, I think, 20 or 25 feet. So where the outlet was too far away. So, but I'm surprisingly pretty darn happy with the quality that they're doing. So I'm looking at the joints. So another important kind of trade tip, right in this area right here, that's the eye zone. That's where it is. If you bend down a little for a shorter person or a real taller person, you need this line to carry through over onto that side. Down lower, way up higher, you can get away with a little quarter max, I would say, difference between those exposures. But in that area, that is a need to be as good as you can get it for lining up area. So glad to see they're tying off. So there's some areas up high that has a steep roof. It's a 6 and 12 roof, and it's actually kind of steep. If you're not used to it, you need to be real careful. So tying off, here's a rope grab, tied off to something on the other side that can support 5,000 pounds. That's what an OSHA requirement is. If you were to fall, it also has a shock absorber so that if you do fall, that you don't have all that weight and stress brought on your body. So all edges of the boards that are cut need to be primed so that the caulking sticks to it better. A good caulking for that is this Quad Max. Okay, it is for a lower temperature, from 0 degrees Fahrenheit to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So right now it is like 40 degrees, or it's December here in Oregon, and it's just going to get a little colder. So you need to have something that is tolerable for that lower temperatures. So I won't be able to paint this probably till next summer, just due to the fact of the temperature, but it does need to be caulked so that it's protected more so for this rest of this winter. So that'll be something to come. We'll be caulking and that sort of thing. What it does require though is you don't strike it with a tool. I'm not sure about that, but that's what they require. I like the tooled edge, just the look of it a little bit better than non-tooled, but they do require non-tooled. So here's kind of a caulk job that they did, and it doesn't look that great, you know. So, but once you paint it, it kind of blends in, goes away, but you're still going to kind of see it without that gap. So you can see this right here, there's no gap there. So when you're caulking that, you're just putting a band-aid over top of it. If it had a bigger gap, even that one's a pretty good one there, but these are starting to get kind of tight. Short piece, it's not going to expand and contract as much, but still, to have a good quality caulk job, it needs to have that gap there. Kind of wish they had a little bigger gap. I'm not going to go through the trouble and cutting that just to get that 1/8 inch. Then I have a raw edge that's not primed, and I risk cutting into my flange of my door. So that'll be an area that will just get like that band-aid caulking job. So I'm out here on the second floor siding. You can see it's got a slope to it. What Hardi does require is a minimum of a little over 1 inch of space right in here. From, you got flashing, your step flashing for your roofing, a nice straight line for your siding to terminate, allows any buildup of leaves, snow, that sort of thing, and it allows this siding to dry out. Cement board like this, if it's exposed to water long periods of time, can deteriorate, so it needs to have something to be able to dry out, lasts a long time. Good and straight cuts. I'm really excited about that. It's all primed. You can see the primer, so you know it's done, which is great. And then over here on this other side, same thing. Very happy. They did a great job. I'm impressed. Not impressed, but happy. Detail of the 5/4 trim up at the top. Really liking that. Looks those little details kind of make a difference. Later on, someday I might end up cutting this, and when you're cutting it with a diamond blade, of course wearing protection, I might add trim to this later, but make sure you don't go all the way through the board. You'd go almost to that point and then you snap the board. Okay, that way you know you're not cutting into your waterproofing behind it. So that's important. That's something I can do later. Once I cut it, then I can prime the edge of this, and as well as clean this all up. So this window that'll be something I have to clean later. But so the trim, that can be done later when I get to it. Lots of honeydew projects. So up over here, so this is a 6 and 12 roof. Like I said before, I made this little platform a little while ago to help for the install. It's pretty good. And then you can right now this platform was made for a 4 and 12, so it's kind of got a little bit of a lean to it, but you can get up to this corner a little better. It's a little safer for the workers, which, you know, the last thing I want is anyone to fall. So thinking safety, that sort of thing. That could have been done as a 6 and 12 platform. Then you can actually put a ladder on it to get up a little higher. Just being careful that it doesn't slide. The other day they were here, it was real icy up here on the roof. I wasn't here, otherwise I'd say nope, you're gonna have to wait or do something down lower till the sun comes out and melts off all of the ice that was up here on the roof. So they were supposedly tied off, which I'm hoping for. That would have been the safe thing to do, but anyhow, always thinking safety and that sort of thing. So up on the gable end, the intersecting roof right there, they're still gonna have to get that. So this face, they're gonna be coming in here next week and working on making sure all those exposures line up going around. So joints, looking at joints for kind of inspecting, making sure those butt joints don't line up. They need to be, these butt joints need to be 2 stud bays apart from one another. Okay, so don't just use a bunch of random small pieces. Plus it doesn't look good either. So we're east of the Cascade Range. Over on the Oregon coast, it gets real windy. So what Hardi requires on high winded areas is to have blind nailing and face nailing. Blind nailing is underneath here. It's nailed, that one laps over it, and also face nailing. So if you have face nailing, the heads of those also need to be sealed, and the nail itself can't be dimpled into the material. It has to be out right on the surface. Seal that up. You don't seal it up, you create an area where water could potentially get into, and it'll wick itself into it. So well, quite the turn of events. We go from good weather to icy, snowy conditions, back to decent weather and lots of rain. So got a little break, but you can see the crew finished up on the siding. This is the front of the house. It's got board and batten up at the top. So all these bats should be on an even spacing, 16 on center. Ideally is that the studs, the gable end studs, are right there, and that sort of things for it to nail into. And then you might have seen in the video of them installing it is the Hardi panel. It's all Hardi, which is a cement board, and the joints of the 4x8 sheets that are up there, they were caulking it. So that was a great thing, caulking it and behind the bat there. So got flashing. that flashing was Tyvek taped on. Ideally, it should have been tucked in and in behind the Tyvek, the house wrap that's there. In this particular case, the way things were going, I was okay with it, but ideally it shouldn't just be Tyvek taped. It should lap inside, shingle inside, so to speak. So we've got a trim board going across, which is great. Ideally that last course would be this would all be the same, but in a house like this, all of the exposures need to follow level all the way around the house. So when you get up to a piece like that, it is what it is. It has to be there. That way when you go around to the other side, it will match up with something over on this side, the exposure. So corner boards, all Hardi, which is great. Kind of a aesthetic detail, something to think about is, so here's a full 5/4 by 4, and then a 5/4 by 4 here. They're not opposite, so you're seeing the end on this side. Since this is the front of the house, you don't want to see the end board right here. You want it just the way it is, if that makes sense. So the trim going around the windows, so on the front of the house here, we elected to have the trim on the front. We didn't pay extra for the other side. Ideally, that's something I can do later, being real careful not to, when you add it later, is not to cut into your house wrap. But for here, you can see the bottom, and I like this detail for how they're installed. The bottom one ends at the door, at the window frame. The sides carry on below, butts in up at the top. So the reason that I like this is if it was mitered, you have that diagonal look to it, like a picture frame. It actually, in my opinion, it would bring that water, any sort of exterior water, rainwater, bring it towards the window. At least this way, it's not bringing it down towards it. It keeps it away from it. So needing to have that metal trim on the outside, or excuse me, the metal flashing on the outside, that was also Tyvek taped. Ideally it should be tucked under. Some things that I'm gonna have to accept that I don't like, but that is what it is. It'll still work just fine. But it should have been shingled under the house wrap. So what I did really like about what they did is they primed that bottom edge. You can probably see that is they primed it before they installed it. So that was a cut piece that they primed it with an oil-based primer. Later on, that way I can paint it. It does not get caulked up there at the top, but it'll have a nice bead of caulk in the corner, caulking down on the sides and the other side, and then it will also get it right down here on the bottom. So what I like, Hardi requires you having that, like I said before, that 1/8" gap in here, and that allows for caulking. So this will get caulked, and then right here will also get caulked. Now behind it didn't get caulked, so everything can the water can shed out, but it's still going to be able to go in behind it and come out at the bottom. So all of these seams are going to get caulked, and then once that's caulked and painted, you won't even know that there was an 1/8" gap there. Another kind of nice detail, this was on the plans. So we got a Hardi material, so that 4x4 is behind here, and then built up to look more like a massive column holding something up. It's not holding up a whole lot, but it's something. But it gives it that look. So it's wrapped in Hardi. It's a 5/4 material, which is 1/16", give or take. Nice details at the bottom, and everything is turned so you see that full material instead of this side. You'd be looking at the ends of the board. when you're like a architectural detail, you're not looking at the ends of the boards from face on, head on. Okay, so coming around the detail around the window and the door, leaving my gaps. This is looking really good. Still, even though it's got undercover underneath the soffit here, it still has metal flashing just like it is. This piece up here, the flashing goes on by, which is great. Inside corner trim, top corner trim. That top corner also helps hold up that soffit Hardi material. So with all of this Hardi, all this cement board, it's going to help out on insurance, help out on fire resistance and that sort of thing. So all that's a real good thing. And then right up there, up at the top, you can see the corbel up there. That's a cedar material. So that'll later on, once we have our, it'll be in the summertime. Here's another corbel. It's gonna dry out in the summertime. I'll probably end up having to sand it again and then stain it. So everything's wet right now. It's cold, it's wintertime here in Oregon. And I need it all to be really nice and dry before I caulk it, before I paint it, and that sort of thing. So that's gonna be a project next summer, or this summer, 2022. So. And then we got our detail up there at the top. Well, that's it for the siding. Everything's looking really good. I'm really pleased with a lot of those details that they did. You know, if I had more money, there'd be a lot more details on the rest of the house, but you got to stay within our budget sometimes. So that's it. This is a wrap for the siding. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something as far as Hardi Lap siding goes, or cement lap siding goes. Like always, if you're unsure or you have any questions, leave any comments down below and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. I'm always putting out new videos and that sort of thing. So it's the whole process of the home build. So like always, be safe out there, especially when safety comes up there on the second floor. It's height. You should be tied off with a harness and a lifeline, like they were up there on that second floor. Wintertime could be slippery up there on the roofs, so be careful out there. Don't want anybody getting hurt. So I'll see you next time on the home build.